Everybody's talking about Disneyland with the 70th anniversary rapidly approaching. There's new decor everywhere in the parks. There's new merch. I mean, tons of new merch everywhere. Everybody's saving up their pennies, getting ready for the big celebration, wanting to buy a piece of Disneyland history. But there are alternative ways of accomplishing that goal. We're back in my garage, aka the LeRoy Schmaltz Memorial Workshop, which is a big giant mess right now because I've been working away trying to prepare something very special that will be sold alongside some very rare, very special pieces of Disneyland history. You may remember in our 70th anniversary of Disneyland preview special, I showed you a very important tiki shield on the gates of Adventureland. That shield, like most of the rest of the Adventureland decor, was carved by my friend LeRoy Schmaltz from the legendary Oceanic Arts. He was a legendary tiki master. My workshop is named for him. He was a friend of mine. He carved several of those shields for Disney. Not only is there one in Adventureland today, but there is also one hanging up in the Polynesian, carved back in the 1970s. I've carved my own small tribute version to that shield before, as part of sort of a tiki planter in my backyard. Kind of tiny, kind of dinky. But I was recently asked to create a special piece, a special custom tribute carving to go into a very special Disneyland-related auction. And here it is, my handmade replica of one of the most iconic tiki shields in existence. This thing is absolutely gargantuan. Would you look at the size of this tiki shield? And I carved it from wood that actually came from Oceanic Arts after LeRoy passed away. I was able to procure a supply of the remaining Oceanic Arts wood, and I've used some of that precious wood right here to recreate one of LeRoy's most famous carvings, not just because this shield appears in Adventureland here and at the Magic Kingdom and in the Polynesian, but also because this little guy right here, this little sort of double symbol, inspired the shrugging Maui figure that has become the symbol of the Polynesian Village Resort and Hotel at Walt Disney World, which of course Oceanic Arts helped to kit out in the first place. But this is just one small piece of what's coming to the auction. This is just my small piece of the participation creating this replica, which is also a tribute to my old friend LeRoy, because something much, much more important is finally becoming available to the public. The original molds from some of the original Disneyland souvenirs. I'm talking about Randotti. You guys may remember that I went on a secret mission out to Arizona where the original Randotti molds were recently rediscovered. These are the people that made all of the best original souvenirs for Disneyland and Adventureland, for the Haunted Mansion, and most famously, the Randotti skulls. This was one of those crazy Holy Grail Indiana Jones style moments where I went to meet with the guy who literally pulled these things out of the dirt, out of sheds. Nobody had seen these things for the past 30 years, basically. And ever since that secret mission, people have been asking me, where the heck are those molds? Well, I've got all of the tiki ones, but those are for me. And as to the fate of those original skull molds, the Haunted Mansion molds, and so many more pieces of Disney memorabilia, well, that is the subject of today's adventure. So let us grab my contribution, my replica Disney tiki shield, and go check it out. All right, I can't even tell you where we're going because it is in a secret location.
It is a secret location of wonders.
All right, well, the Eagle has landed. We are now in a top secret facility, the warehouse of Grand Circle Tour Auctions. They're the ones that are going to be selling this piece right here. But this is not the main attraction. The reason I'm so psyched that this is going to be in this particular sale is because of these. This table right here, covered in epic, gnarly, amazing skulls with the original molds sitting right behind them. This table is holding a whole bunch of epic and for the most part lost Disney theme park history. Because although you don't see a bunch of kids walking around holding souvenir skulls today, believe it or not, these were some of the best selling theme park souvenirs in the early days of Disneyland, all the way up until the early 1990s. Literally back in the heyday of Walt Disney's Disneyland, you would see little kids walking through the park holding these little gnarly skulls. They're the most gnarly, rotten punk rock souvenir Disney ever had. Some of them are covered with snakes and spiders. They were sold in Adventureland. Other ones have the eye patch on them. They were sold as souvenirs in New Orleans Square for Pirates of the Caribbean. Some of the very first Pirates of the Caribbean souvenirs. One of the most popular Adventureland souvenirs were these sort of shrunken head versions and these skulls right here that had hair dangling from them, and they would dangle from a rope. Many of these skulls and different Randotti designs had glow-in-the-dark versions. This one is still here. You can kind of see that glow-in-the-dark tint. I cannot tell you the number of people who reached out to me after I went on that secret mission and kind of met the guy who rediscovered all the original Randotti stock and molds that had just been moldering out in the desert for years. I'm talking certifiable Disney legends, old school theme park collectors, souvenir hunters. Everybody was so stoked on it. Where did they go? Where did they go? And I could finally answer the mystery. The legendary treasure hoard of Randotti is coming to auction through Grand Circle Tour Auctions. And there is so much stuff. As you can see, a little sampling back here. There's Western stuff. They sold in Frontierland and Knott's Berry Farms. Obviously, all the tiki stuff and tiki molds, Pirates of the Caribbean souvenirs. The first and best souvenirs sold related to the Haunted Mansion. But I think when it comes to the name Randotti, the skulls are the thing that is the most iconic. And this sale is going to have all of the original skull molds from the 1960s and 70s, from the heyday of Disneyland, because these urethane molds are made from material not used since the 1960s. These things have lasted a long time. In fact, longer than some of the later molds they were using in a later era of the company that were made of different stuff that was brittle and cracked and decayed. But these things somehow survived because they were accidentally stored in a perfect desert climate. That's a long story. I'll have to check back on my last episode for that, and we'll have more about Randotti in the future. But this little table right here is not all of it. In this sale, there will be more than 100 original Randotti skull casts and original molds. Dude, these are the original Adventureland, New Orleans Square, Pirates of the Caribbean, Jungle Cruise souvenirs, and the original molds that created them, and they could be yours, or they might be mine. I will definitely be bidding on these. Now look at this, okay? You see the skull here with the patch over his eye. This is the mold that created that very piece. The little spider skull, this is the mold that created this guy. The snake mold is here, the laughing skull is here. Every classic Randotti skull design is represented right here. You got the Randotti skull with the divot in the top to be an incense burner. The Randotti skulls that were turned into the little shrunken heads with the hair on them. And there is so much more. Dude, there are bins and bins of this stuff. Like I said, well over 100 pieces just in this lot alone. There are literally skull molds of every shape, size, and description, from necklaces to the giant skulls that are almost life-size that you just saw over there. These molds are amazing. The crazy part is they display really well. Like, how sick would this skull mold be on your shelf with an original Randotti skull? And I probably shouldn't say this, but speaking as someone who owns the tiki ones, the best thing about these molds is that they're still usable. Shh. Like, dude, look at that. You can see the design in each one of these handmade molds. And every one of these molds was created in Randy Smith that owned Randotti's backyard and in his workshops. I mean, the hands of the master, the guy that sculpted these original Disneyland souvenirs in the first place, is all over this stuff. All right, I've cleared the table and put another piece out right here. And at first you're thinking, well, that's not very impressive to look at, but this is an iconic piece of Disney theme park history right here. Because Randotti didn't just produce souvenirs of their own design that were sold in the Disney theme parks. Eventually, they started creating Disney IP souvenirs as well, including many of the earliest Walt Disney World souvenirs, and that's exactly what this mold was producing. This mold right here is one of the original molds for one of the most iconic souvenirs of Walt Disney World, Big Al from the Country Bear Jamboree, the original, and still the best. Dude, look at that. All the detail is preserved in here. This mold has lasted longer than the original version of the attraction. Think about it. This was created 54 years ago. You can actually read Big Al's name inside of that mold right there. 50 years ago, this produced one of the original Walt Disney World souvenirs. And you could run a Big Al out of this mold that's just as clean and crisp as it was. All right, we've made another change. These are the ones that when I saw them in person in Arizona, my mind was absolutely blown. These molds you're looking at right here are the original Haunted Mansion and Boot Hill tombstone molds. These were the original Haunted Mansion souvenirs. It's a lot harder to tell on camera than in person, but you can just see there, here lies, and see that bat shape right there and this distinctive top of this tombstone. That right there is a Haunted Mansion souvenir from Walt Disney World. In fact, it actually specifically says Walt Disney World right in here at the bottom of the mold. And actually several of these will either say Disneyland in the bottom of them. Those are the original souvenirs from 1969 when the Haunted Mansion opened, or Walt Disney World, original souvenirs from 1971 when it opened. Almost all of these tombstones had some sort of customization factor where you could get your name printed either on the back here for the Haunted Mansion ones or on this little scroll type thing for the Boot Hill ones. And these Haunted Mansion tombstones, souvenir tombstones, are quite famous, very well known among like hardcore Disney collectors and hardcore Disney parks fans. What's way less known, because they have not had their day in the sun yet, are the Boot Hill tombstones, which were not only sold at Knott's Berry Farm, but versions of them were also sold in Frontierland. Nobody ever talks about the fact that Frontierland used to sell personalized tombstones, often with very funny sayings that today are not considered the politest. But just for one example, this one says, "Here lies a dirty old man." This is a Haunted Mansion one that says, "Here lies the Horror House Kid." This is from Walt Disney World. This is an original 1971 Walt Disney World souvenir mold right here. This freaking blew my mind when I saw it for the first time. And they're still blowing my mind now. These were a very common, very popular thing, sold for years and years. They're not the most fragile things in the world, but they are breakable. And so, of course, a lot of these were purchased by kids who would lose them or break them over the years. So they are kind of hard to find now. And I'm talking just finding one of the tombstones, finding the original mold, that is almost impossible. This is nothing short of a weird Disney miracle. And the rarest of them all was the Mac Daddy, granddaddy of them all, the giant souvenir tombstone. I mean, I have big hands. My hands are like, 9 inches from stem to stern there. Look at the size of that thing. I have seen real tombstones smaller than this. These were literally one of the earliest Haunted Mansion souvenirs ever offered. If you went to the Haunted Mansion on opening day, you would have been able to buy a Randotti souvenir Haunted Mansion tombstone. If you went to Frontierland back in that classic era where you see Black Bart running around having gunfights, I mean, the mine train through Nature's Wonderland, all the stuff that has disappeared forever from Disneyland. These are what's left from that era. We can't walk away with an engine from the mine train through Nature's Wonderland, but now some lucky person is going to be able to get their hands on the thing that created the souvenirs. Those kids that rode that mine train went home with. That, to me, is freaking amazing. And of course, I was part of getting the guy who found these in touch with the right people in different auction houses where he made a choice where it should go. So I'm just happy to be in here getting a chance to see these again. I didn't know if I'd ever see them in person again. And let me tell you, just looking at them is getting me so freaking excited. And the tombstones are also one of the most iconic early theme park souvenirs. I mean, Haunted Mansion, you can't go wrong with the Haunted Mansion. But they didn't just make these tombstones. They also produced many statues and figurines. Now, what I have here is a sample of a couple of the Western figures. These will also be in the auction. But famously for Haunted Mansion, they made a figurine very similar to this called Luke the Spook. And this thing right here that I am holding in my hand is the original Luke the Spook mold. So it's not just tombstones in the auction. You have the Luke the Spook mold here as well. And it doesn't end here either. That treasure hoard out there in the Arizona desert had so much Randotti stuff in it. There is no way I could show it all to you in one video or 10 videos. We couldn't even fit all of the tombstones on this table over here. So not only are Randotti pieces, some of them very rare to begin with, but the original molds, this is a chance to own a piece of Disneyland history nobody has ever held in their hands before. It's just blowing my mind to think that there will never be another haul like this available, probably ever again. Okay, so look at this. This is one of my favorite things. This little eye-patched skull plaque right here. Randotti made several plaques like this, but this one specifically was sold as a Pirates of the Caribbean souvenir. And it was so popular, they ended up needing a whole bunch of molds just to produce the vast amount of these that they needed to for those hungry crowds at Disneyland. So there's collectors that will just collect the finished pieces like this, but a piece of the actual production art, the molds themselves, nobody has got that
Nobody.
I mean, from almost any other company, even Walt Disney Productions themselves, most things like molds, pieces of production materials, and art would just be destroyed or thrown in a dumpster. That's what everybody thought happened to the original Randotti molds. It was just a freak of history that these things have been found. I mean, to hold in your hand original Pirates of the Caribbean souvenirs from the 60s and 70s, and then to be able to hold the original molds that actually created those things in your hand or displayed on your shelf, that is amazing. All right, as I kind of hinted at, Randotti also made a whole bunch of Western figures, Western plaques, like look at these snake ashtrays and incense burners right here, and the buffalo skulls and all that kind of stuff. These were sold in Frontierland, Knott's Berry Farm, and all over Route 66. Anywhere in America where there was a Western attraction, you would find Randotti souvenirs. Not only do they have the molds here, but a ton of finished pieces, which will also be in the auction. So there's all kinds of relics hiding out. I mean, imagine being able to buy all the buffalo skull plaques, or the Randotti skulls, or the Western figures. But it's not just Randotti stuff that I came to peek at while I was dropping off my Tiki Shield. There are untold amounts of amazing Disney relics everywhere in here. Like this came straight out of the park. This is actually a piece from the Storybook Land canal boats. This is an original Autopia Mark 7 badge. So these were actually on the Autopia vehicles. This is an actual tooth from Old Smiley, one of the crocodiles on the Jungle Cruise. And then these booklets right here that you see surrounding Old Smiley's tooth. These are sort of pieces of behind the scenes Disney employee stuff. Like this is a handbook here for accident prevention from backstage at Disneyland. This is all sort of behind the scenes stuff about how many people go through each attraction an hour, and all kinds of weird maintenance information. Like who knows? Like absolutely fascinating behind the scenes information nobody ever got to see. And then this is the thing that absolutely blew my mind the most. This is a story department reference manual dating all the way back to the 1930s, and then they'd run it off over the years. Basically, this stayed the guide for like writing Disney stories or writing Disney material for decades and decades. This has all the naughty words you can't say in a Disney story. It has all the stuff that behind the scenes they were like, oh, emphasize this, don't emphasize that. I mean, this is the story Bible for Disney stuff, dating way back into the time of Mickey Mouse and Snow White, and they kept using this all the way up through the 80s, the 90s, who knows? They might be using this same story Bible behind the scenes to this very day. And then these are particularly weird and difficult to explain, but basically if you have ever stood in line for the Matterhorn at Disneyland in the last 10, 20 years, you have stood on the brass plaques created from these masters right here. These are sand casting masters, and they use these at the forge where they created the numbers you stand on to load onto the Matterhorn in metal. So these are the originals. They still have even a little bit of black sand right there from the sand casting process. I mean, this is so weird and cool, but it gets even better. Look at this bad boy right here. Look at the old Disneyland Resort parking sign. This is where the arrow would have gone that you could adjust to tell people which way to go for parking. And it's got the old school DCA, Disneyland Resort, DCA 1.0 logo on there. And then look at this. Do you know what this is? This is the little hidden Mickey guy that's on top of all the lampposts at Downtown Disney and all over the Disneyland Resort. This little base right here is like a display piece to hold this up, but this is the actual metal piece that's out all over Disneyland. And then this was just handed to me like, that's not a big deal, but this is insane. This is a little sconce right here, a piece of the Adventureland gate. This is the ceramic piece that goes over the fire nozzle. This is where the actual fire comes out. This was at Disneyland on the freaking Adventureland gate. I should have worn a bigger jacket so I could sneak this out with me. And then look at this. There's all kinds of pieces like this going in the sail right here. This is a buoy, like a prop from the Jungle Cruise at Disneyland. And then look at this little tiny piece of paper. This tiny little ticket with the hole punched in it is what you would rip off your general admission ticket to get inside Great moments with Mr. Lincoln. This is a child's ticket right here. The story that I just heard is that when it first opened at Disneyland, Walt really wanted people to see that show. It was very important to him. After all, he did direct it himself. And that's amazing. I love this little tiny piece of Disney history, but it might have made a big impact on this kid. He obviously kept it for a long time. Dude, there are giant holiday topiaries that were used at Disneyland in the early 2000s. Ride vehicles from Six Flags Magic Mountain. And then look at this. This is one of those Disneyland resort signs you see when you're walking into downtown Disney or into the hotels or parking your car in the parking structure with all the park rules and the property rules on it, including the fact that miniature horses are exempt from the no pets rule if they're service animals. That's right, you can bring your service animal miniature horse to Disneyland, at least according to these old school rules. I want that. I'm gonna be bidding on that. Nobody bid on it, it's mine! Okay, and then the last thing I'm gonna show you today, there will be so much more, and I'll tell you where to find out all about it in a second, is this amazing piece from the inside of Pirates of the Caribbean. This right here is one of the Spanish soldiers in the fort's actual costume, pulled off of him, eventually replaced on the ride. Look at the patchwork there. This is actually on the soldiers in the fort in Pirates of the Caribbean. Look at this. This is the way they Velcro the costumes on to the animatronics. I mean, this is an amazing piece of history. I can't believe they're letting me touch it. Hey, once you're the new owner of it, you can tell everyone to keep their hands off. I mean, the sheer amount of stuff I've been able to show you, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. Not just for this sale, the one that my Tiki Shield's gonna be in, by the way. Don't forget about that, ladies and gentlemen. But the amount of crazy stuff in here that I can't show you this time is just insane. So, okay, here's the information on the insane Randotti, first time ever up for sale, original molds auction. Not to mention this gargantuan, super heavy Oceanic Arts wood LeRoy Schmaltz tribute replica tiki, whatever you want to call it, thing that I made. All you have to do is go from now till the end of the month when the auction is, because the auction is on May 31st, 2025. Just go to liveauctioneers.com and type in Grand Circle Tour Auctions. That's where you'll see the sale information coming up. There are more than 200 lots, and some of those lots, like I showed you with the Randotti skulls, have more than 100 pieces in them. That is the insane amount of Disneyland history going into just this one sale. And I've only been able to show you just a couple of the items floating around here loose near the table where we were showing off the Randotti stuff. So you can just believe me when I say there's going to be some amazing stuff for sale. Like I said, I want to get some of that sweet 70th anniversary swag from Disneyland, like the merch and all that kind of stuff I was looking at yesterday. But I gotta save some of my cash because I'm gonna be bidding on this specifically. Leave it alone. Don't even look at it. It's mine. Also, I'm gonna be bidding on this. You know what? Don't bid on any of this either because I want it. I want it all! All right, one more time for this sale, because Grand Circle Tour Auctions is relatively like young, up-and-coming players on the scene. Go to liveauctioneers.com, type in Grand Circle Tour Auctions, but I'll also put links down below in the description for other places you can check their stuff out. Super shout out and a big thank you to them for letting me come and look at my old friends, the Randotti molds, as well as being able to put my own piece into the sale. It's the first time any of my artwork has ever come up in an auction setting. I'm very excited. I'm very honored. I have no idea what it'll go for, but I'll still be bragging to my grandma at the end of the year. You know, a piece I created was in an auction. Yes. Yes. Dude, my mind is blown from seeing that stuff and so much other stuff that I could not show on camera. Like the idea that this stuff has survived through the years, even stuff from like the more modern era that survived from the park, that people held on to it and knew its value when it was essentially worth nothing, much less something like the original Randotti molds that created everybody's favorite childhood souvenir at Disneyland. I mean, you just think to yourself, it's amazing this even survived. And look, I love checking out the new stuff. Like, I love checking out the 70th anniversary stuff. In fact, by the time you're watching this, I'll actually be in the park for the kickoff of the 70th anniversary. Epic Universe for Universal. I mean, I love that park. That's all brand new technology, new IP, but there's something so special about those early years souvenirs at Disneyland. Like those days where somebody like Randy Smith could be sculpting and pouring those Randotti sculptures in his own backyard and then become a vendor at Disneyland with the top selling souvenirs in the park. It's those stories about the people who created all the stuff, the people who figured out how to make the magic. Those are the stories that will inspire me for the rest of my life. Just like the story of this place right here, the former and last home of Oceanic Arts. It's actually the first time I've been by this building in a while. It's amazing to see the blue trim still on the building, the blue awning still over what was Bob Van Oosting's office there. That was it right there, the showroom. Paradise Lost. Oh, and it looks like now it's Vicious Villas Fitness, or Vicious Vias Fitness. So strange. But Oceanic Arts is the perfect example. My friends Bob Van Oosting and LeRoy Schmaltz, they started their business in 1956. They literally learned the business from guys who were the first suppliers for Adventureland and all the classic tiki bars. And they created all those iconic shields and masks and things that you see when you go into Adventureland, things that definitely sparked my imagination as a kid and led me into a lifetime of curiosity and wanting to learn about art and faraway cultures and wanting to travel and see what's over the next horizon. I mean, at the end of the day, LeRoy would always tell me, yeah, if I made something that people like to stick in their backyard or look at it in a theme park, then I guess I'm happy, you know? He would kind of just write it off that way. You know, but to some of us, the dreamers out there, some little sculpture or old prop or piece of Disneyland is just a whole other thing to us, right? It has some kind of magic in it. And to me, I'm very aware of the fact that all of that magic, everything from the theme park souvenirs like the Randotti stuff, to the tiki masks, to the carved doors of Trader Sam's Enchanted Tiki Bar, were created by men like Randy Smith from Randotti, or Bob and LeRoy from Oceanic Arts. That's why I'm always so fascinated about the Imagineers and the people who came up with all this stuff, the artists, and the craftsmen and women that made the magic possible. That's why you're never going to hear me stop saying the name of LeRoy Schmaltz or Bob Van Oosting or Randy Smith or any of these people, because that's how they live on. And I, for one, don't want to see their names disappear or be lost to history. Kind of a bittersweet moment out here looking at Oceanic Arts. It's the first time I've seen it since the last day I left, cleaning out the warehouse before they turned over the keys and all that kind of stuff with the Schmaltz family, and was gathering up that last bit of Oceanic Arts wood from which I carved that tiki shield. It just goes far beyond fandom. This is stuff that's really personal to me and that I really, I don't know, I believe in keeping alive. So normally I wouldn't film my random adventure over to a place to drop off a tiki shield. This is kind of stuff I used to not ever film, actually. I'd keep it off camera. But I just thought in the spirit of the 70th anniversary going down, then they're doing this 70th anniversary Grand Circle Tours auction with some different pieces and those Randotti molds. It was kind of appropriate to kind of stop and take a minute to just take that little peek in, that little tribute, you know, to seeing those Randotti pieces and then also dropping off the tiki shield and remembering my friends from Oceanic Arts. Anyway, I know this isn't sort of our usual adventure or our usual kind of production over here at Randomland, but I just figured some of you kindred spirits out there would enjoy coming along for the ride today. All right, now having said that, we are switching gears completely. Tomorrow you're going to see 70th anniversary of Disneyland kickoff celebration. Then immediately after that, I'm on my way to the airport, heading back to Florida for a major event coming up next week. And there's nothing else I can show you today that's going to top what we've already seen. So I think this is where we call it. Thank you guys for watching. If you enjoy adventures like this, please consider joining our Patreon. We've got little morning announcements, vlogs on there. We've got extra bonus podcasts and all kinds of things. But mainly, it is the way, the number one way, we keep this show on the road. And since the end of this particular episode happens to be a little more personal than our normal theme park adventure we've been having lately, probably a good time as any to tell you, oh, don't worry, there are some more completely non-theme park road trip style adventures coming up in the very near future. We got the Disneyland 70th kickoff to deal with, and we have a little theme park grand opening in Florida coming up here. And we'll definitely see a lot more Disneyland history and interesting stuff this year as well. But after the Florida trip coming up, prepare to hit the road. We are gonna have some wacky adventures, my friends. But for now, we've done our duty. Time to go home and sleep well. possible Christmas presents for Allie. You know, people always ask me why I don't do a video showing how I edit my videos. Well, because it would just look kind of like that. You don't want to see that.